All right. Welcome to our conversation with Jessamyn Neuhaus, author of Geeky Pedagogy. Please check that out. It is a lovely book. And we are going to do a structured dialogue that's mostly about pedagogy, but let's see what comes up.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I am so pleased that you said yes. So, all right, here is the first prompt. Jessamyn, please tell me a frustration you have in enacting your pedagogy.
So there's two, one really specific and one kind of broad. A specific one is something that I know is so key, but always have trouble doing, and that is listening to students more than I talk. And that is partly a result of being a egg-headed brainiac who loves to talk and talk and talk about the subject that I'm studying and passionate about and teaching. But it's also an introvert coping mechanism, which is weird. It seems kind of counterintuitive, but one way that kind of socially awkward introverts cope with social interactions is to talk too much. So I'm constantly trying to remind myself to zip my flapping cake hole and listen to students. I'm always so glad when I do, but that's a kind of like day-to-day thing that I can write about. Everybody should do this, but when it comes to actually doing it, it's hard. And then a more meta view is the fact that embodied identity matters. It always matters. Instructors' embodied identity always matters. And that the things that I have to do to build rapport and demonstrate approachability and connect with students and be encouraging is not the same as what some of my colleagues who are white, male, and look more like, I'm making air quotes for people who are listening to audio, who look more like a typical history professor, the stereotype of the professor. I have to do more and I have to do better. And of course, that's even more complicated by racial identity. I enjoy white privilege. That gives me a little edge there. But for Black and Indigenous and people of color who are teaching college, that's a whole another layer. And that's frustrating on a daily basis. And of course, always when student evaluations roll around, it's hard, it's tiring. I've experimented some with non-traditional grading, like ungrading and specifications grading, and it takes a lot of work to get my students to buy into that and not be afraid of that. And that's partly, not totally, but that's somewhat due to my embodied identity and how I present myself. And that can be discouraging.
Okay, thank you. Tell me something you wish people thought more about in their pedagogy.
I think it would be kind of like what I argue in the book, the social aspects, the emotional aspects of teaching and learning, and that those can be things that we can learn how to do and practice, and that they're very important, but they don't come naturally to a lot of us, and that to do them effectively takes planning and preparation and recovery time. Mm-hmm. You know, I know some faculty who tell me, you know, they feel guilty that after class they just need to go hide in their office, but that's okay. You know, that's because you've been putting yourself out there for the whole class period and you need to rest. That's okay.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Describe a pedagogy success.
Oh, that's so funny. You sent me these beforehand and my brain totally blipped over that one, which is so funny because I'm always advising people pay attention to all the things that are going well and the things you do successfully, not just your problems. And my brain just dropped that question altogether. I don't remember you asking that at all. That's so funny. Pedagogical success. Can we come back to that one?
Sure.
Okay, I have to think some more.
Wait
Also,
for-
let's say you're asking this question in July of 2020. So a lot of more, let's say, challenges are foremost in my mind right now. But let me think about it. We'll circle back to that one.
All right. But wait for this next one. Tell me a small miracle.
Oh, this one I'm totally prepared for because it popped into my head immediately, and that is coffee. Oh my God, coffee. Every morning, coffee. It's a miracle. And partly I've been thinking about it because my first book in my dissertation was about cookbooks. And so I read a ton about the history of food and cooking. And during World War II in the United States, coffee was something that was in really short supply. So during the social distancing and the lockdown and the quarantining, every morning when I could have a cup of coffee, I came to coffee late. I've only been drinking it maybe 10 years or so. And every morning, I mean, it's there for me and it makes me feel so good. Like every morning, it's not, I'm a morning person. So it's not just waking up, but like every morning it's like a cup of, I can do it. I can do this thing. That's a miracle, man.
Thank you. Can we circle back to the pedagogical success?
Pedagogical success. Pedagogical success. So I think one that I just experienced is kind of, it hasn't had I haven't applied it yet, but it's the first preliminary step. And that was rethinking online teaching and learning this spring. So I'd never taught online before, just hadn't had much inclination and hadn't needed to. And then of course with the pivot, emergency pivot, I had to, and next semester I'm able to choose to do so, which I am. And I'd say for the first half or so of that emergency pivot, I was trying my best, but I was starting to feel really overwhelmed. I've never done it before, and I was losing students, and I know things weren't going as well as they could, and I started to just feel like that I can't do this. There's no way I can do this. And then Flower Darby and my other online teaching pals like you on Twitter reminded me that learning how to teach effectively takes a long time and you have to keep learning as you go, which of course I wrote a whole book about, so it's funny I forgot it, but my mind really switched. Like after hearing from other people who'd been teaching online a long time, hearing them say, you can learn how to do this and you can learn how to do it effectively, I started to think, I can learn how to do this. I can learn how to do it effectively. And that changed the whole way that I approached just the idea of teaching online. And I can tell that having that growth mindset about learning how to teach effectively online has been such a huge help. And I see so many of my colleagues are stuck there because it just seems like such a completely different world if you've never done it before. And that feels like a success to me going forward.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.